The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay. Hey, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of this webinar with us today. Happy Earth Day, first of all. And I think we couldn't have a better person or a better organization to know more about on this day. First, I think we will get into that, but first thing first, like if you guys are listening me, like just put some ones in the chat box in the question area. And if you cannot, please write that down in the chat area too. And Mark will try to help you technically. Other than that, please in the chat box, let us know that where you are from, like where you're joining us from. I can see Alicia is there. So thank you, Alicia, for joining. She's our regular, basically. So she's there. She has been, I think, on all, not all, but 80% of them. So yeah, I'm truly grateful for that. So put some ones, put some your areas where you're from, and we will get this started. So first of all, hello Elliott, how are you?
Hi, Arid. I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I'm excited for just a good kind of open conversation, share from myself and also our organization. And I think you kicked it off right by saying this is a wonderful way to celebrate Earth Day. We should no doubt be doing, I think, protecting the planet all the time, but it's a good to take a step back and focus on one day in particular and say, this is what we got to get to do. So anyways, thanks for having me.
No, it's an honor, truly an honor. I was going through your website. I think I will be showing that around in the background, basically. Again, I already told you, well done. I think it's really informative, and you guys are truly doing a great job. I think Aaron is the person who kind of, these people have the heart of gold. So I was like, really? Then I kind of looked at it and then it was just amazing and it was truly impressive. So it's truly an honor. So please introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from, what circumstances you grew up in, and what led you to be where you are today.
Sure, happy to. So Elliott Powell, obviously, as kind of mentioned at the outset, or any of the ads leading everybody here, but I'm currently sit in the position as Executive Director of Sustainable Harvest International. And we'll get into, I guess, all of the organization, what we do and who we are later on in the conversation. But yeah, that's my current role, and I've been in it for the past 3.5 years. I've been with the organization for 7, previously as the Director of International Programs. I am originally from Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is obviously in the middle of the United States, but for folks that might not be too familiar, it's in the Midwest, 3 hours outside of Chicago. And I grew up kind of, I guess you could say, your normal upbringing, middle class, kind of suburban neighborhood, but with a really wonderful family and really supportive and always encouraging us, my sister and I, to continue learning, to go out exploring. They always, kind of supported us in our travels and asking good questions and wondering where life might take us. We always felt super supported in that way. And I guess I mentioned that because it's been, I guess, kind of a curvy path getting to where I am now. But it's been really exciting. Kind of fast forward, I studied environmental sciences, environmental management in undergrad. I stayed close to that, but then it wasn't really, so I always had this kind of connection with the environment, of kind of understanding how things work from an ecosystem approach, kind of the larger movements in an ecosystem and how things are related. I find that really fascinating. I mean, even to this day, and not just honestly in the environment, but just how an organization might work or how a business might function. I really like understanding that big picture of where things are fitting in together. And just with the environment, it's always fascinated me, from playing around in the woods when I was a kid to being able to engage now as an executive director with my work, where I'm just constantly inspired by families that work with us and that go for these big transformational changes in their lives. And so I took that and I guess kind of ran with it. And I joined the Peace Corps as the United States Peace Corps as a volunteer, as an environmental education volunteer. And I would say that's probably a big, one of my big kind of career or professional milestones that set me off. It was the first time I found myself thinking I could do something more with a career, not necessarily in the Peace Corps, but working in a kind of a community setup where community development issues were talked about, where I could work kind of in partnership with families and in partnership with community members. And then I fell in love with the region of Central America. Specifically, I was living or working in Nicaragua. And that was just eye-opening for me. I'd traveled just a little bit before then, so to actually get a bunch of good experience outside of the United States, which is so important for anyone, just to get that additional perspective and understand that there's other ways to go about life, and there's other ways to define success and define your path forward. So at any rate, that opened up my eyes a lot, and I kind of left after 2.5 years with the Peace Corps with a lot more questions for me in how I could continue to work in some sort of similar capacity at an international stage or an international setting on community development issues, and then even more, what's the role of these organizations? Is there a role? There's a really interesting and oftentimes troubling history of international development, and especially coming from the United States. And so my head was swirling when I left, and I really enjoyed it though. And so I thought, I'm going to go back to the United States and I'll figure out kind of what's next. And I got hooked up with a big international NGO working in water and sanitation. I wasn't doing anything on the programming side. It was much more behind the scenes, kind of understanding how an international NGO works. So fundraising, administration, data management, like everything. It's a big machine, it's not just all programming. And that's really what I was excited about. But I think that helps me kind of get a more comprehensive understanding about how this work is carried forward. And so I spent a couple of years there, but I knew I always wanted to kind of go on, and I was always interested in studying more. So I got a graduate degree. I applied and was fortunate to go to a good school in New Orleans, Louisiana, called Tulane University, and they have a center for essentially Latin American studies. And that's where I was able to take all this stuff I was kind of asking myself and asking others, along with some practical experience, and apply it to a graduate level degree. I always had my kind of sights on the horizon of getting back involved with an international NGO of some sort. The programming side, I'm really interested in program design, implementation, evaluation, and things like that. And so that all started to kind of work together, and I had different spheres of my life happening, overlapping with each other after I graduated from my graduate school, and had this big kind of environmental component. Then I had the social side of things, of just kind of mobilizing people and understanding agency a little bit more, and how people group together around this change that they want to see. And then the regional side of it, so Latin America and specifically Central America. And I happened across Sustainable Harvest International, and I guess you could say the rest is history to a certain degree.
7 years. 7 years. That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
That's long.
Yeah.
So I was like, I think we will go to the questions of the organization later on, but I have one real quick, because when I was doing this, I can easily say Sustainable Harvest International, but when it comes to the acronym SHI, so it is SHI, what do you guys call it? Like, sustainable energy, yeah.
I'll move to SHI after I say Sustainable Harvest International, maybe my first time, just to put it out there. But Sustainable Harvest International can be a mouthful, and so I'm often, especially in situations like this, long conversations, SHI is a little bit easier to manage. So feel free to use SHI.
SHI, yeah. Initially, when I was doing the research, I was like, how to call this? She, I think no, it cannot be called she. S as a perfect. So yeah, I think I will have a little more questions about you basically. So
Yeah.
you just explained me highly impressive your journey, all of that. So who are some of your heroes, like most influential people in your like life, which kind of help you channel into this passion basically? There's always a role model, there's always a hero, which kind of who you look to and then say, because it's difficult for, I think, in my own experience, difficult to follow passion when
Yeah.
different things are going around. But I kind of produce those people who kind of do that.
Yeah.
So looking at you is really impressive. Yeah. So who are some of the heroes?
Great question. And you know, I don't necessarily have any like celebrities or anybody like that I've always, followed or looked up to. And honestly, like I said at the outset, I would have to say my folks, my parents. I've always looked up to them in terms of just their support that they provided me in allowing me to explore, allowing me to fail, and to kind of encouraging me to get back up, or to, when everything looked confusing, like what do I want to do next, or always felt like there were opportunities before me, ahead of me, and I totally put that into or from my parents. That helped significantly just to kind of continue to whittle down this path that I'm on. And by no means have I got it all figured out by any means right now. But I think in large part, it's because of them. They provided a safe space, a really warm and welcoming space to learn and to grow and to explore. I'll say that it's kind of pushed me to where I am now. And to this day, they still offer wonderful support. And that's fantastic. And I think I'm really fortunate for that. But, kind of more towards the direction of this conversation, I am always inspired, and I consider the families that we work with and these individual farmers as no doubt role models. And their stories are unbelievably inspiring, to really be in kind of survival situations and to dig in deep and to make transformational changes, to own that, to choose that is inspiring. And I'm fortunate to travel a bit with my work, and I come back just totally rejuvenated from the experiences and from the conversations I have with individual farmers. And I know we'll get into that in a little bit, but I'm fortunate, I guess, where I have this strong kind of upbringing, and then I'm able to recharge it throughout my career, recharge it a couple times a year as I travel and get to sit down and talk to people that are going through big changes and that are up against, their backs might be up against the wall. And I find so much inspiration in that.
So a beautiful answer, I would say. So a few more questions. I was reading through the website and I went through your profile, and it said that you are the barrier, like you're the bridge basically between the field and the headquarters.
I hope a bridge is not a barrier, yes.
Yeah, sorry, not bridge, sorry, not a barrier, sorry, bridge. Yeah, and then I was reading like you have a lot of costumes for some reason. So you and your daughter have a lot of costumes. So tell us something about your family, like how many kids you have, and what's the story behind the costumes? A lot of costumes.
Oh, absolutely. We might not even have enough time on this conversation to cover it all, but no. So I'm a family man. I have a wonderful wife and two beautiful children, two daughters, Layla and Tesney, and we live. And I think I mentioned it at the outset. We live in New Orleans, Louisiana. So after I came here for grad work, we ended up staying, and New Orleans is a really wonderful, beautiful city, and it embraces this the colorful aspects of life like no other place I've ever been. And kind of right front and center of that is Carnival, or Mardi Gras, and which is a big celebration of life and of dance, of food, of culture, of music. And it's obviously connected with kind of loosely with religious or religion. And at any rate, there's lots of time for party and lots of time for festivals and lots of time for parades and costumes. And between us as a family and our community of friends and family members, we're able to build up over the years a really awesome costume collection. And it's the moment where you can just like put on whoever you want to be, and you get to put it on, and you get to dance in the streets, and you get to, and it's not out of control. It can be out of control if you want it, but it also can be very family friendly, and it can be anything that you want to make it, but it's this big celebration. And we're fortunate to live in this place where you don't even have to look for it. It comes and finds you, and there's just people in costumes left and right. And just a quick story. We have lots of costumes, like I mentioned, and the girls have chests full of costumes, and they're always running around the house with some sort of something on, to the point where like it doesn't phase you, or if you were to come and visit, and we might have some sort of outfit on for a parade or something, it's totally normal. The girls don't actually question it at all. If I might look like a pirate one day, they'd just be like, all right, what's for dinner, type of thing. And I didn't grow up like this at all. And so I am just, I guess, kind of riding that wonderful wave of carnival and Mardi Gras culture. And it's not just that. There's kind of seasons for all these different things here in New Orleans. But that's very much where that closet of costumes comes from.
You have a lot of closets right now, I guess. A lot of costumes. I will take on this because my daughter is like 8 months old. And my only daughter, yeah. And I can well imagine myself and her doing costume parties and doing something like that. So I will take this on you, yeah. And I think I look forward to that. It's a good idea because we don't have a lot of carnivals here going around, but I love costumes. So when I go outside the country, and yeah, I enjoy a lot of costume parties.
Look, for next time you find yourself in the States, you're always welcome here. I'll introduce you to some good Mardi Gras fun.
Oh, so kind of you. So okay, and okay, last one from my side, and then we can jump to your presentation. What is the new tool you have recently kind of learned or obtained that you recommend? It can be a digital tool, it can be a physical one, which you think like, wow, oh, this is new and this is really handy, basically. So this is a question, something. Yeah, a new tool, basically. It can be digital. I found something like recently, which was quite mind-boggling for me, and people are doing that, but that's Web 3.0. It's something called Funny Beer or some Funny Beer, I guess. So it's NFT and stuff like that, but I'm like, okay, the world is going to a different direction, but a new tool, basically, for you.
Oh man, that's a tough question. I don't have anything that's just like, I'm trying to think. I've been using a shovel a lot right now, and I know that's a really lame answer or not an interesting answer. I'm trying to be a good gardener. I'm trying to build up a garden outside of my house, and I find myself, it's like where I go to meditate a bit, and kind of late at night or on the weekends or whatever, and I find myself, honestly, I'm on a screen all the time. And so with work, that I think my subconsciously, I kind of gravitate towards physical tools now, because I'm otherwise in front of a screen a lot. And no doubt there's cool tools online or digital tools, but
go to webinar, a new tool for you, basically.
Look, GoToMeeting was a new tool for me. I'm used to Zoom, so that's a great answer. GoToMeeting is my new digital.
I think I will email you the story behind it. Really kind of asked Wayne to do it, but for some reason he doesn't like Zoom. So I think it's about the capacity of people, because at one time, this is a 1,000 people kind of a software, like 1,000 people can join. Okay. And the number is always tricky. Like the number is never correct, because people can join through cell phones, people can join through like call numbers, and they're listening to it. So we have this ability on Zoom. I think it's quite less. Maybe that's the reason. Yeah, there's one more reason, but I will email about you. But I think that's how we will. Further ado, we will jump into your presentation, and we can take on from there. So I'm giving you a screen from it. Okay. Let's know about your organization, SHI.
SHI, that's right. So I'm just going to set this up for a second here.
And I will stop my screen, like camera, so it's only you and your presentation.
Show this window. Again, my first time using GoToMeeting. Just, can you clarify or let me know if you're seeing?
I can see your screen with, the right one.
Okay, the right one, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Arid, for that great introduction. So what I have planned here for you and for the rest of this conversation, before we kind of get into the Q&A, is to share more about Sustainable Harvest International, or SHI. Kind of who we are, what we do, and where we sit in the world of this type of work. I find it, like I mentioned in the beginning, I've been here for 7 years. It's a really wonderful organization. We're definitely on the smaller end of things as an international environmental organization, but I honestly believe, and I always talk about how much impact that you're able to see when visiting SHI supported farms, or being with our program staff in Belize, for example, or something along those lines. So I think the footprint that we create is really, it's a kind of deep impact, but really bigger than the actual size of the organization. So I'll get into that here today, and basically I'll share kind of what the problem is, why we think regenerative agriculture and smallholder farmers are an important solution to climate change and to climate crisis. And then I'll dive into SHI as an organization and our 25 years of experience in creating essentially climate leaders for the generations to come. We are, I kind of just mentioned that, and you can see here on this first screen, we're currently celebrating our 25th anniversary as an organization. My close colleague, Florence Reed, founded SHI 25 years ago and has been a part of the organization ever since. And that's unique for an organization, but it's also, I think, really exciting to still have a founder close by and very much part of the work. We are like I mentioned, we have 25 years of experience focused in Central America, and we work directly with and in partnership with smallholder farmers to conserve the environment, protect the environment through regenerative agriculture and ecosystem restoration. And when I say smallholder farmer, I just want to kind of clarify that from the beginning, that what I'm talking about is subsistence level farming. The FAO defines smallholder as 2 hectares or less, I believe, and that's right in line with SHI farms, just to kind of put that picture, that context in folks' mind. These are subsistence level farmers that are working really hard, at times struggling to produce the food for their own kitchen table, and not necessarily part of some other kind of supply chain or anything like that. And we exist in this area because we feel like SHI can have the biggest impact. A quick second about the organization. We're based in the United States. We have a team, kind of 5 to 8 individuals, depending on kind of full-time or contract workers. But we're distributed 100% remote. Like I mentioned, I'm in New Orleans, and then we have some folks in Maine, Florida, Georgia. So we're all over the place. And then we have our programmatic operations. So these are also SHI staff, but these are our program staff. These are trained agronomists, trained leaders, program managers, and we have operations in Belize, Honduras, and Panama. And my kind of quick math is we have 23 or 24 staff across Central America right now. And they are, we kind of, everything we do here in the United States is in support of that work, from administrative to strategic planning to communications and marketing, is really so we can push our work forward and work with more farming families across Central America. So I mentioned kind of at the outset what I was going to do. So just to talk about and kind of foreground the issue where SHI exists, I think this is a really important place to start. And excuse me. So for many of the world's smallholder farmers, the 500 million smallholder farmers out there across the globe, this is a really common, and especially in the case of SHI, this is a really common narrative where kind of environmental degradation and rural poverty are so interlinked. And so typically, or I'd say generally speaking, in the experience of SHI, a lot of farmers that we work with are using lots of conventional agriculture. So heavy use of agrochemicals, and maybe in the case of some of them, an over-reliance in kind of heavily populated areas of slash and burn farming. And that really just leads to this kind of degraded landscape where topsoil is being just completely kind of ripped of its nutrients, and it's no longer producing like it would normally. And so there's an over-reliance then of agrochemicals and kind of going back and forth with this. And then once that piece of land dries up or is no longer producing the yields that's needed, someone might go to the next plot of land or jump a fence into a national park and continue to farm there. And so that can spin out of control, as you can imagine. And so these decreased yields lead to this kind of climate crisis for the context of SHI. And results are very real in the sense of hunger, of poverty, of not knowing where the next meal comes from, or not having a balanced diet. So maybe you're just producing corn and you're doing everything you can to just get enough corn to eat and maybe to sell. But any sort of income, any sort of extra profit that you might have is immediately put back into trying to produce a yield for next year. And that's a really vicious cycle. And so that oftentimes leaves families and community members to make really difficult choices to migrate, to leave these communities that they've been a part of for generations, or leave their kids behind while they go look for a better opportunity. And that's a really common story for many of the farmers that we work with, or that start off before they start off working with us. And so, and that's, nobody wants to make that. Nobody's making these choices because they want to go on a vacation. It's because it's a survival. They need to, find a better opportunity to be able to come back and support their family. And so that it's not only really harsh on the environmental landscape or the natural landscape, it's really, really tough on, for the social side of things with families. And so, SHI has kind of found a place here in this web of what can oftentimes be like a web of linked problems that just kind of keep going and building on themselves. And but we also see these same smallholder farmers as a really productive solution for climate change. Using regenerative agriculture techniques, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But these smallholders also represent such an important part of our ability as a human race to reverse climate change. Now, granted, there's lots of solutions out there, some more technical, some less technical, and kind of from SHI and the work that we do, it's much less technical. It's farming. It's working with the land to produce food in a more sustainable and healthy fashion for people and the planet. There's this incredible statistic that always pauses or stops me in my tracks, that smallholders worldwide provide food for up to 80% of the global population. So when you think of that and the power that's behind that, of all of these smallholders that are operating on 2, 5, 6, whatever acres of land, add that up, and 80% of the global population, or the food is being provided for. And so you think, well, these are really agents of change. This is really a unique opportunity to shift the climate crisis in the right direction. And so, like we show here, there's a potential to reverse up to 40%, but just by working through the global food system itself. So the way that we produce food, if we can kind of get that right and change that into a much more environmentally friendly, but also do right by the farmer, allow them to be able to choose and produce what they want to choose and produce. There's significant potential for reversing some of these negative effects of climate change. I'll also note that when we work with farmers, agroforestry plays a really big role in what we promote. So the idea of kind of combining, in a most loose general sense, combining agriculture and forestry. So working with nature to integrate species, integrate crops, to build up soil health and keep the ground covered and provide spaces for habitat. That's all part of this kind of agroforestry approach. And so with all of that being said, SHI is here. SHI kind of operates in this nexus of environmental degradation and rural poverty. And in our experience, with farmers that we partner with, and it's been over 3,000 in these past 25 years, the vast majority of them will embrace the opportunity will embrace this opportunity to restore their lands if given that chance. Most of these rural communities are often not even seen on maps, quite literally, not even seen on maps, or they're overlooked by kind of national or even local government initiatives or campaigns. And so they jump at the chance, in our experience, to take up new technical expertise, or kind of a push in the right direction based off of where they're working with their field trainers and things of that nature. And so we really see that the solution is with these families and stewarding the land in an environmentally friendly way as one potential solution for climate crisis. I'm often asked, well, what is it that SHI does? And I would say that SHI empowers people. It transforms lives of smallholder farmers in a positive direction. It creates agency for farmers to kind of take that control of where they want to be planting, what they want to be doing, and see what's possible, as opposed to kind of that reactive approach of just always being behind on, let's say, a debt or a particular agrochemical that you would need to have your corn grow, whatever it is. SHI also creates resilient communities, and that's something that we have seen more than ever since the start of the pandemic. There's obviously we like to think that, these communities are now, have a resiliency for climate change or food insecurity, things of that nature. But when the pandemic started, kind of March of 2020, at least for the United States and here in Central America, there was immediately like, what are we going to do as an organization? But what are these families going to do? How are people going to eat? How are people going to feed their families? Because the food systems that we were seeing and the chains of how things were connected were instantly broken down and instantly kind of put under a microscope as what's not working. And so, wondering how this was going to happen, but we were flooded with pictures and videos from participant farmers, and their family members saying, hey, things are okay, even though, like, for example, in Honduras, where there was a 100% lockdown, nobody was moving. Public transportation was locked down, and nobody was moving for weeks on end. The markets were closed. So what are people to do that might otherwise rely on the market for the food? So we were getting these videos of a farm tour, essentially saying, hey, we're doing okay, thanks to this training, thanks to this farm, this beautiful kind of array of crops and diversified even income stream that we have, we're doing all right. And so for SHI, that meant, we've been doing this for 25 years, and there were lots of other organizations and companies, and I really tip my hat to them for needing to be nimble and to be, pivot quickly to stay alive, keep their doors open, keep staff on, provide the services that they do. And maybe they changed their model overnight. But for SHI, thanks to our farmers, they were saying, this is working. This is what we're able to build resiliency here. And that was so powerful. As an organization, we said, we don't need to change. We need to double down. We need to do this more. Of course, there's like little, we weren't able to actually have, as much one-on-one contact, right? Or group settings were totally illegal at one point during the pandemic. But it meant that our model was really helping and really building up these levels of resiliency. So that's kind of my quick answers for what it is that we do. Now, moving forward, it's kind of like the how now. So how do we do this work? How have we been successful? How have we been kind of created ourselves as regional leaders across Central America in these past 25 years? And a lot of it has to do with our methodology and how we engage and partner with farmers and their families. We've been developing this model of long-term technical assistance, and I'll get into the details of that here on the next slide. But with farmers. And so essentially farmers are choosing to participate with us and engaging on what is a structured approach over the long term, and ending in kind of a formal graduation process of being, climate stewards and climate leaders and stewards of their land. And I mentioned that agroforestry plays a big part of it. We really see it as not only agroforestry not only kind of brings in biodiversity or attracts biodiversity, sequesters carbon, improved soil health, but also, in addition to these really strong and important technical and kind of scientific aspects of agroforestry, it also creates a lot of new opportunities for farmers, and it creates diversified income streams that people had not, been exposed to or had at their fingertips. And so we see that a lot as being really important component as well the livelihood aspect of this. So it's great, the environmental, the social components, the health components of it, but also the more we can kind of fold in the livelihood aspect of making this, of putting more money in people's pocket, giving them more opportunities to make choices on what they're doing with their time and how they're providing for their family and their grandkids, that makes it all the more sustainable. So that livelihood, and I think that's an important component for this conversation, because we're talking about kind of that angle of livelihoods plus taking care of the planet. So just to dive in a little bit more in depth about what our multi-year approach looks like. We have it broken down into 5 phases. You'll see that we kind of love the number 5 here at SHI in what follows in the next slide as well. But this is a multi-year approach, so it's roughly 4 to 5 years long, and a partnering family will go through from phase 1 through phase 5. Kind of everything's done successfully, and they've seen this transformational change, and then there's a big graduation at the end. I won't go into too much details of these phases because they get really detailed quickly, but just to touch on each one individually, there's a lot for the organization, it's really important that we invest a lot of time and energy at the forefront of selecting, kind of operating in the regions that we operate in. It's all very intentional to promote as much impact as possible from our work and for the lives of the families we partner with. And then, from there, there's a lot of work in community selection. So talking to community leaders, talking to local government officials to see, where might SHI fit in here? And also who wants us there? That's extremely important kind of in this work, and any sort of community development work, international development work is the buy-in, is the local buy-in. Making sure there's, an identified need from communities, not from an outside institution, and then them essentially selecting or choosing that they would want to partner with us. And that translates right into phase 1, which is family selection. So we'll quite literally give a presentation. We're invited to present in a really kind of neutral site, like a community center in a rural community. And we'll say who we are and what we do and explain responsibilities. And it's very much shared. And so there's lots of questions about that, where some families might have seen maybe kind of a government handout before, or something, kind of similar, or a really short-term project, a 6-month project, and then it's gone. There's a lot more to SHI. And so we want to be clear when we're having that. So then we'll go one by one and talking with families that have shown interest of working with us, and explain this is a long haul, we're here to be partners, and it's a technical knowledge exchange. It's not a handout organization. And then families will self-select. So they will say, yes, that sounds great to me. That's what I want for my family. That's what I want for my farm. And that right there, that's a real key component of kind of ensuring sustainability, that somebody will stick with the program. They're going to keep going years after we leave, is that they're signing up for it. It's not SHI saying you and you do this. And it also helps that all of our staff across the region, across Central America, are all local. So local culture, local language. So, and they're from the area. They're just trained agronomists, but they understand what people are going through. They, being a field extension agent is really tough, and it's not just technical stuff. You're a psychologist, you're maybe a nurse one day, you're everything to this family. That might otherwise not have access to similar services. And so that relationship starts in phase 1. And then I'll just one more thing for phase 1, and then we can kind of move on. But it's important that the family is a part of the design of where they're going to go with the program. And it's super individualized. So a field trainer will sit down with the family and say, all right, what do we have here? And the family will literally draw on a map what they have, picture, or it's a colorful picture, and they'll say, this is what I have. But then the next phase is just so important, is drawing where they want to go. So it becomes essentially 2 farm plans. You have one where you are, and then you have one where you're going. And that serves as essentially an informal contract, a roadmap of sorts that you can constantly go back to and say, hey, what was it that we wanted to do next? Or, my plans have changed. How is this new part going to fit in? And that, again, keeps up with the levels of sustainability. And it's just super important to always kind of be mindful of that. Phases 2, 3, and 4 are introductions and then kind of deeper dives into the details around environmental stewardship, of reforestation efforts, of integrated regenerative agriculture techniques, of terrace farming with live and dead barriers, and do this here and not there, but really getting into the weeds, so to speak, of that, building up real secure levels of food access, of health and nutrition in the family. And then for some of these families, they find interest in maybe possibly selling some of this surplus after they've established this strong level of food security and food sovereignty, taking that control or having that control. Some show interest in selling, commercialization of their products. And that's really interesting because it's like a discontinued development, and SHI is very much there to support that in however we can, to a certain extent. We're not loan officers or anything like that at a microfinance institution, but we're very much there to, kind of share in the structures of what does it like bookkeeping look like for your own finances if you want to sell the surplus of platano that you have, or if you are interested in making more biofertilizers that you could sell to your neighbors and things like that. And there's hundreds of stories exactly of those examples that I mentioned. And then that goes into phase 5 of which is really short. Essentially, it's community leadership. It's a graduation. It's a formal graduation. There's a party. We didn't have, unfortunately, great parties during great celebrations during the pandemic, just because of kind of local laws and restrictions of group gatherings. But it's a really earned and important recognition of this transformational journey that these families are on. And it's also recognition that the institution is stepping away and moving back from that kind of, really constant presence. And, I've spoken at these before. I've attended lots of graduations and spoken with farmers. And this is really kind of, we always talk about how this is the really important part, because this is where it becomes SHI is gone and it's working in partnership with your neighbors and making sure that it continues on in that way. Briefly here, and then we'll get into some more interesting examples, but I think it's important to show that, this is a holistic approach that happens over this multi-year technical assistance program. We have agroforestry, which we've talked about, but other areas of impact are the environment, food sovereignty, livelihood, and capacity building is kind of set aside here as a fifth area of impact. But to be quite honest, that's happening all along. I mean, as there's leadership development classes, or just attending group workshops and kind of taking this on and sharing with your own neighbors on your own, not necessarily with your field trainer. That's really what this is about. And so these 5 areas of impacts, the importance here is that it's holistic. The importance here is that it's not just a direct technology. It's not just one thing. Every one of these kind of work in tandem together, and they only add to the potential for transformational change, and they only add to the levels of kind of like the sustainability, the likelihood that that these new techniques will stick and that these changes will take root. And that's all that SHI is about, is ensuring that we're kind of working across this broad spectrum of community development, but as an environmental organization. But when you're working with families, everything's interconnected. And then on the left, I just threw in, there's some key statistics that we've had over this 25 years of experience, but we've worked with more than 3,000 families. We've planted over 4 million trees as part of agroforestry settings, as part of reforestation campaigns, protection of water sources, those types of things. And then down here, over 26,000 acres been restored from degraded lands. The next 3 slides are brief snapshots just to give folks an idea of what some of the projects look like. Even a picture, here's Felipe Marin in Belize. Belize, we work in the northern area in the 2 districts of Corozal and Orange Walk. For years, we were in the southern part of the country. But now with some exciting partnerships, we're actually in talks of having a more national approach. at any rate, you can see farming families. We work a lot with establishing kitchen gardens, kind of right outside a home. We have a really strong wood conserving stove project. So these are clean cook stoves that greatly reduce the number of or the amount of firewood that needs to be collected. Not to mention, it's much healthier. The number of toxins in the room and connected rooms is vastly reduced because of these wood conserving stoves. And these are models that SHI has developed over years. And then some other trees planted and acres regenerated. I'd mentioned that we worked in in Honduras, I should say. Cihuatepeque is in the center of the country, and that's our office there. But we're in, at this point, 13 communities actively around Cihuatepeque. But in active families at the moment is right around 200 that are currently participating in our technical assistance program. So, but kitchen gardens, again, these stoves, and you can see just the level of the amount of trees that have been planted. And these are real kind of output numbers, I recognize, but the outcomes here is what we're talking about is our landscapes transformed, or our lives changed essentially, and soils improved, and big diversified crop selection. That's really what we're talking about. And then finally, Panama is our third core program country. Here's Alberto Rivera standing proudly, and I'll actually talk about him in 2 slides from now. But in Panama, we operate just west of Panama City, about 2.5 hours in the province of Coclé, and currently in 8 communities, all about an hour or so outside of Penonomé, which is where the headquarters is. But Alberto Rivera is a recent graduate, actually, and he's got a really wonderful story that I'll share here in a second. But this has been really kind of one of our champion programs, along with Belize and Honduras, and pushing what we're doing as an organization. Just to take a step back, I mentioned there was a quick photo of Edie's holding one of her babies in Honduras. I wanted to highlight the livelihood component here and what she's been able to develop during her program with SHI, during her time in the program, and then where she is now with it. Edie is a young mother of 2, and but really, part of the community in Santa Cruz del Dulce. This is a really rural community. There's probably 60 other families that live there, and not great access to the market, or it's always a big long bus ride away. And so for SHI's presence in there, a lot of the community members have since turned to big diversified farms, but some of them have taken that to another level and beginning to sell and produce food for commercialization. And Edie's is a wonderful example where she's kind of taken this newly established level of food sovereignty and run with it. So here she is on the left, she's holding a nacatamale, and then on the right, and she's making some empanadas with some other community members. And she's turned this into a business, and she's never been a business owner before. She'd always had a kind of a knack for baking, but seeing a bunch of new products come in that she's now producing herself, she started to have a surplus and had an idea to make some more money and diversify her income source that might have otherwise been typically from selling maybe coffee or another crop. But now she's able to provide for her 2 kids. She's able to, take them to get the health checkups that they need on a more regular basis, or better school uniforms. I mean, and we're really talking about increased opportunities when we're talking about this access to greater, or to an increase in livelihood. And I mentioned I'd get back to Alberto Rivera. He has a really exciting story from La Pedregosa, Panama, and it's just typical of so many of the other farmers that we work with. But him and his wife, Feliciana, they have 3 boys. They live kind of on the edge of town, and they've always struggled with getting anything started, anything to grow. You talked to Feliciana, she said, we basically scratched the dirt for 16 years and couldn't get anything to happen. They signed up for the program really with high hopes of making some sort of change, of being able to provide for themselves. I think that was it at the very beginning, but it's just totally blossomed. And you can see here, this is a quick view, excuse me, of kind of simple terrace farming. You have some live hedges, live barriers in here to help control with erosion. And then he has bok choy that he's cut up and getting ready to, no doubt, a few of these will go to their kitchen table, but the rest will go out to the local market. And Alberto has like run with this idea of selling extra produce and establishing himself as a place to go buy actual produce. And so what never was considered before an extra income source of kind of failed attempts at his farm is now the main thing that he does. And if there was a shot of the other side of his farm, you'd see solar dryers, you'd see all these other things that he's really implemented and taken charge of. His boys, he tells these stories of now his boys can not only can they continue school, but they're going with better materials, and they're actually, going on past 6th grade, which is kind of the mandatory, or at least up till in Panama where people will go. But in these rural communities, you can often find kids stop at that kind of earlier level of education, but they now have the opportunity to continue on their education. So those are the real kind of deeper impacts that you see from some of this work. And so kind of rounding this out, I mentioned, I think previously before, we've worked with 3,000 families, over 3,000 at this time. And these essentially are becoming climate leaders. These are people that have agency and kind of this resurgence of energy around taking care of land, around providing for themselves, and owning, and a lot of ownership now in what their farm produces and how they feed their kids and how they will collect their seeds for the next year. That all matters so much, and it starts with one family and it begins to spread out across community, and then community to community, these neighboring communities, and you have regions that begin to operate this way. You start seeing a really large social movement underway, and it's exciting and just totally inspiring. And it starts with families like this here from Honduras. But that's exciting, and I think for SHI we could continue on, but we also feel like there's a lot to share here. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of knowledge in our 25 years of experience, and leveraging what each one of these farmers has taught us as an organization. So what is that? What's the role of SHI now as we're kind of pivoting to our next 25 years? And so we're very much, in this moment of celebrating 25 years as an organization, but it's become a kind of an inflection point, like, well, where do we want to go next? And we've been working and kind of tinkering on an idea of scaling our operations with a focus on these, the next these other 500 million farmers. And that's not to say SHI believes we will get there to every single family, but we'll certainly try, but we'll do it step by step, but only in partnership with other organizations or entities. But we think that there's a real crisis happening in terms of the climate crisis. But we also believe that there's a really productive solution here by working with smallholder families and through ecosystem restoration and regenerative agriculture techniques. And so we've recently launched a Million Farm Transformation. This is an initiative to attach ourselves to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, to have an impact on 1 million farms, plant 1 billion trees, sequester 16 million tons of CO2, to regenerate 8 million acres, and to achieve food sovereignty for up to 5 million people. And that might seem wild and big numbers, and they certainly are, but it's our new North Star as an organization and where we want to go. We feel like, and we can have a big impact by sharing our knowledge and working in partnership. I think globally speaking, we're seeing a big shift in terms of people wanting to do things more in a climate-friendly way, whether it's business down to government policies, kind of you name it. And I think SHI is uniquely positioned to share where everything that we've done over these years for improvement in this regard. We've got 3 pillars, and this rounds up this part of the conversation, but we have these 3 pillars of scale and where we see us growing. So always continuing to do what we do, but expanding, like this first pillar on the left. We want to expand our core programs. So that work and these individuals we saw in Belize, Honduras, and Panama, work with more neighboring communities with that same core program of multi-year direct technical assistance. But we also think that there's innovations out there that we're excited to apply to our own methodology to see what would work. And so we're kind of in this new era of creativity and innovation where nothing's going to change for our core program, or it might in the future, who knows, but that we want to take these things that we see other organizations doing or literature showing and see, let's try that. Let's create a little bit of a culture of innovation. And so, for example, we're piloting a farmer to farmer program as we speak in Honduras, where we train a trainer and the trainer trains other farmers. And that's nothing necessarily new, but it's new to us and how we would work. And so we want to be kind of that creative, that innovative organization. And so that's a way that we believe we can scale our operations, kind of lowering that cost out to farmers, but increasing the amount of impact we still have. And then finally, replication. Replication is probably the main one that'll see us get us to our North Star. But this envisions SHI as a kind of smaller nonprofit or an NGO partnering with bigger entities to share our local and our regional expertise in regenerative agriculture, in ecosystem restoration with government entities, say the Ministry of Agriculture, or larger organizations that might have grants from the government. So we can play, I think there's a really important role for SHI and all this years of experience in acting as a local trainer of sorts. And so that's our future. That's exciting. And we're well on our way of trying to figure it out. You never know what will happen in the future, but we've had really positive response to this. And expanding our model in Panama, for example, innovating our model or testing an innovation in Honduras, and then we have exciting conversations right now with portions of Belize government for what we do. So that's all to say. We have big year right now. It's the 25th, and to celebrate it today with everybody here on Earth Day is all the more exciting. And I'll just put this last kind of plug. If there's any questions, I mean, here's our website. I know Arib will also put it up, and I believe it was in the kind of an original ads for the talk. But follow us on social media, join us. I'd be more than happy to add my email. Please reach out. And so, yeah, there we have it. I'll hand it back to Arib, and I think we can get into some good question and answer.
Yeah, I can see a lot of them, and we can keep this slide on. So it's a good slide. So like if anyone wants to go look for you and want to connect with you. So a great presentation, Elliott. Thank you so much for that. I think we will just take 10 more minutes of yours because we will be really respectful to your time. Sure. Looking at the questions, first thing, how much time do you spend on average with the farming family you choose? 5 years?
Yeah. So up to 5 years. We're beginning to test this down to 4 years and kind of almost put it as kind of like a university model in that regard. But there's flexibility. Of course, nothing happens perfectly in like our field trainer model or field operations model, but we have flexibility between 4 and 5 years, but we're really now working with a 4-year model.
Got it. Okay, this is one question from I think this is yeah. Sorry, a lot of I think links from Alicia. Thank you, Alicia. That was really helpful. We will be looking at that, but I'm looking at questions right now. Okay, does SHI give certification after the graduation, and can the farming family use it to teach others in the community?
Just to be clear, the question was about certification. Is that right?
Yeah, certification of, like you said, like after the graduation. And
right.
Is there any regulatory body for that, like which they can?
Wonderful question. And I would say yes and no. The no part will come first in the sense that the diploma the certificate that SHI hands out at the end of our core program at the end of 5 phases is not from accredited university. It's from SHI. It's more of a symbol of that transformational journey. No doubt just as important, but it doesn't come with kind of a backing from a local institution or anything like that. It's something that we do, and it's recognition of our program. However, People still use that to go on and do many wonderful things. And it's no doubt becomes a part of their education. Maybe it's not the formal part that there's a diploma from a university or something like that. Now, the other side of that is, I mentioned we're piloting or testing a pilot in Honduras. A really exciting and impactful part of that pilot is we're partnering with the Honduran Institute for Professional Education. INFOP is what it is, and they're certifying our model to be a trained agronomist or a trained in specific to agroforestry. So what that means is that it's an accredited course. They will no doubt go achieve the amount of hours by just nature of us having a long-term approach, and that can then go on a resume, and you can go look for another job. It becomes a workforce development program in a sense, and that's really exciting for SHI and for the individuals going through that particular part of the certification process. So I think that's kind of a direction of where we're exploring and very much part of our future.
Beautiful. Okay, next one is, why is slash and burn used in Central America if it isn't sustainable? Is this a newer practice? When did this practice begin?
No, it's not new by any means, and not just just for Central America, but slash and burn has been used for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, and it's more kind of related to this kind of milpa style farming where you would slash and burn, and so cut down everything, and then you would rotate with another piece of land, or you slash and burn, grow there, and then you'd move on after kind of you've used up, let's say, the life of the vitamins and minerals and the soil quality, and you'd go through this kind of in a 3-field circuit, more or less. But it's still, and that is successful and very important to a lot of local cultures across Central America, and you still see it happening. But where slash and burn becomes, I guess, kind of runs into problems, and what we see as an organization is with overpopulation and land is running out as communities grow and expand. Slash and burn becomes less viable because the available amount of land is not necessary. It's certainly not the same as it used to be hundreds of years ago, obviously. And so farmers are oftentimes not letting it lie fallow and grow back in this kind of natural sense. When it was, in the very beginning of times, it was people were, had the space and the time to let it grow back and regenerate itself. But, in these areas where we work, it's just between kind of protected lands or overpopulation with communities growing. It's no longer as viable as it used to be. So I'm always kind of careful, I guess I should say, as slash and burn in the instances of really highly populated areas for SHI's context is not as sustainable as it once was.
Okay, beautiful. Now coming to the next one. This one is from Larry. Yeah. Have you considered making that training accessible to public via digital course or ebook?
Yes. Great question, Larry. And that is very much, we're exploring that now as we're kind of, in this scaling up approach of digitizing our model, or what would it look to have portions or create a course. There's exciting things I think we can do with everything from elementary schools to, university programs to even digitalizing our model from a farmer, or from a field extension agent to a participant farmer. I think that's very much where a lot of the kind of the energy is going. If we're really going to scale at higher levels, how can we share this out, share information out, and make it more readily accessible for folks that might have a cell phone? I'd say that with my own kind of concerns is just how do you control for quality in that regard? And, I'm not the only one, I think, that has that idea. There's big debates out there about that, but that's something that we're actively exploring with our own scaling methodology or our own scaling up program. But, I think there's something to that, Larry, of just making this more accessible in a real kind of developed curriculum.
Beautiful answer. Okay, going to the next one. I think we have already answered this, but let's ask it. Do communities, families reach out to SHI, or does SHI identify the communities in need? And the next one, like following it, how do you measure community resilience to climate change and other forces?
Great questions. The first one, it's a bit of both. By now, a lot of the communities where we work in have heard of SHI before we are there, before there's any sort of institutional presence. And that's just kind of word of mouth or people seeing our work from before. Now, it took a while to get there, of course, of kind of establishing that real institutional reputation in an area. But we will say we move into a new area, a new region, or if we move an office, let's say, we would reach out to communities and local government and say, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do. And that's where that conversation happens. But we would never go into a community and set up shop or even put on a presentation without being invited in by community leaders or community elders. And so it becomes very much a two-way conversation about our existence in a community or not. And then, if I remember right, about measuring for community resilience.
Climate change and other forces.
Climate change and other forces. That's a great question. And I think, I mentioned there's a rather structured and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Rigid is not right, but that's what I want to say. There's a rather, just a structured monitoring and evaluation component to our work. And it follows along the 5 phases. And so we do baseline studies, so an entrance baseline and an exit baseline, and that helps us evaluate the changes over time. So the same questions are asked for somebody entering as they are exiting, and we're able to see across those 5 areas of impact, what were the outcomes and how did they change? And oftentimes we come across outcomes that we never anticipated before. And so it's, that's a really interesting aspect, is like, well, what's happened that we might not have thought would happen? But all the while, we're also monitoring our work. And so there's semi-annual studies, or semi-annual surveys, I should say. So every 6 months, we do a semi-annual survey of participant farmers. And then at the end of each phase, to make sure everybody's kind of achieving what they've set out to achieve, we do an end of phase evaluation as well. That's all pretty heavy on the quantitative side. So we're definitely, we're cognizant of the qualitative side too. So lots of testimonials, interviews, pictures taken, and things like that, and videos taken. And so that helps us make sure we're capturing both sides of the aspect specific to kind of that community or climate and community resilience. Those areas of impact we try to get at with the impact areas that we measure. So anywhere from kind of environment to all the way to agroforestry and leadership development. And we're in this kind of really interesting and exciting process of figuring out, well, how else can we attach ourselves to maybe some of the larger, more global monitor standards of the SDGs? So we collect what we collect, and that helps us understand if we're on mission or not. But what are those as they connect to SDG number 2, for example, or one of the others? And so we're in this process of looking through that, and there's a ton of overlap, but what is there still to measure in terms of living income, in terms of gender, migration is another big one. There's areas I think we want to grow in terms of our own measurement of our work.
Perfect. Okay, we have less time, so I will go with my own 2 questions. First one is, how does the funding works in SHI, and do you guys have any commercial partners also?
Good question. None of this would be possible without significant funding, and that's what a lot of our U.S. office does. In part two, our program offices help, but we are a nonprofit, 501c3 based here in the United States, and so we rely, 100% on fundraising. And for SHI, 25 years of experience. We have lots of really loyal individual donors over the years, and so that have stayed with us. I think that's really a testament to our organization and the mission alignment that we maintain. But Right around kind of 80% of our funding of our annual budget, $1.3, $1.4 million comes from individuals. Then we have family foundations make up the next percentage. 15% of these kind of vacillate obviously over different years, but these are family foundations or just foundations in general that offer multi-year funding, more in the terms of, well, obviously in the terms of grants. Some of this is restricted to kind of certain aspects of our work. And then finally, the question around corporations. And absolutely, this is an area that we're excited to be growing. And we've had, believe it or not, in the pandemic, a lot of interest from corporations. I think as they're beginning to shift to kind of grow their own ESG areas of their business, reach out to us. And so kind of that 5-7% comes from of our funding comes from corporate donors, and they can be kind of corporate engagement, they can be straight up donations. We are really excited to kind of do it all and make it work for whatever corporation is looking for. I will say we've had, we're always trying to diversify that breakdown, and we've had significant changes, in this past year or two with increasing the foundational support, and that's been exciting for us, and it's helped us really move into this kind of proactive scale-up approach, is with really good foundational support, or foundations, I should say, support. So I will see that it'll begin to balance out a little bit more in the coming years.
Wonderful. Okay, last one from my side, and then I think we will wrap it up. Yeah. What us as a community, EAT community, can help support SHI, and like any parting words from you in the end, basically.
Absolutely. That question obviously comes up quite a bit, and I would say check us out online. Just you being here, obviously shows that you have an interest in this work and are excited to learn more. I'd be more than happy to connect with anybody. Like I said, if Ari wants to share my email out. But check us out online. Consider supporting our work. We're 100% nonprofit fundraised. All of our funding comes from individuals just like you, and it's not just individuals with deep pockets or big foundations. It's a big percentage are smaller donations, and that just adds up over time. And there's other ways to join and to support as well. Of course, we appreciate funding as much as we can just to continue our work, but sharing us with your neighbors and being a part of, we're trying to grow kind of a volunteer side of our organization, and how you can be an ambassador of what we do. Follow us on any of these links. Any of this stuff helps. And I think that's probably connected to a parting word that I have is just that any small bit adds up, and it really helps. I think SHI is a testament to this. In 25 years, we started extremely small. Florence Reed as our founder, in kind of a bedroom of her parents' home, working with 2 field trainers in Honduras, and we've grown immensely since then. And now we have extremely loyal donors, loyal supporters. We're doing really exciting things across the region, and we have fantastic staff and creating really deep impact. And the model is unique. And so I guess that's the whole point, is that this stuff adds up over time. And so any little bit matters. We just actually published a blog today on our website if you want to check it out, but it's about doing little things. I ride my bike all the time. It's on Earth Day. It's a time to kind of reflect on this stuff. And so any little bit can go a long distance, especially as we start to create movements, and change comes from this conversations. So please do join us, and there's many ways to join us, financially, of course, but also through social media. Come visit us in our programs across Central America. We also do trips. We're just getting those back online after the pandemic as things are starting to quiet down. But yeah, kind of a roundabout answer, but or a roundabout takeaway, I should say, that any little bit, there's no task or no activity too insignificant, that it all matters.
Wonderful. I think in the end, people are saying thank you for being on. And as I said, it was an honor, and I really appreciate you being here, sir. So I will make sure we spread this more to our community, and even small bits we can help SHI. So I think we will wrap it up here. And again, thank you so much.
Thank
Mark,
you so much
take us away.
everybody for joining. I appreciate it.
Bye. Oh, perfect. Perfect.